Lees-Galloway.
Speaker, before I get underway, can I offer my congratulations to my colleague and friend, Dr. Rajan Prasad, on becoming a grandfather for the first time today. I'm sure, as you can see, Dr. Prasad, you have the congratulations of the whole House to you and to your family for that beautiful baby girl that's joined your family. But down to business, Mr. Speaker, I gave this bill quite serious thought because it is, after all, a conscience vote tonight, although you might be surprised to hear that if you just tuned in. When earlier on in the debate, Sandra Gowdy made the slight mistake of using the word we. I don't know if it was supposed to be the royal we, but she accidentally said we will not be supporting this bill. I thought, OK, that's the National Party, they've had a bit of this lately. They don't quite get around to telling their junior members exactly what their position is on everything. It happened to Melissa Lee, after all, with the Waterview extension. She wasn't quite told what the position was on that, and then was left to hung out to dry on that one. So I thought maybe just a lack of communication, maybe. But then as the speeches went on, we sort of got the same arguments over and over again. The research unit obviously didn't produce too many notes on this one, and we got the same arguments, the same reasons for not voting in favour of this bill. And then just the previous speaker, Mr. Bennett, let that royal we slip in there again, just by mistake, I'm sure, just a slip of the tongue. So obviously it wasn't actually a lack of. It wasn't a mistake at all. No. So it wasn't actually that caucus weren't talking. I bet actually the conversation at caucus probably went something along the lines of, "We can't whip you, but here's how you're going to vote." So they've all been whipped into line, even if just quietly.
Point of order, Paul Quinn.
Mr. Chairman, I've been listening very intently, Mr. Speaker, very intently since this gentleman rose to his feet to speak. I haven't heard one thing about the bill. All he has spoken about so far is, in fact, how supposedly we're going to vote.
Yes, well, I think the member makes a point, but this does tend to be a little wider ranging than the member has an expectation. One would have to say that some other members have transgressed in that area again. So, Iain Lees-Galloway.
Speaking to the point of order.
No, I've ruled the member shall continue.
So anyway, this is a conscience vote, and I know that there have been some discussions, and if I get time this evening, I will refer to the Law Commission's review of the regulatory framework of the sale and supply of liquor and their thoughts on conscience voting to do with alcohol issues. But this bill, as we know, as we've discussed several times tonight, does essentially two things. It amends the watershed for liquor advertising from 8:30 to 10 p.m. And it also transfers, or would seek to transfer the jurisdiction for liquor advertising from the Advertising Standards Authority to the Broadcasting Standards Authority. And Mr. Burns has put in a lot of work in making sure the Labour caucus is very well informed about the history of this bill. It's one that was first introduced to the House by Matt Robson back in 2005. The torch then got passed to Martin Gallagher and has now been passed to Brendan Burns. That's not a reflection at all on the quality of the bill. It's just simply it's the nature of members' bills. I think that we have very few members' days. And they can languish at select committee. It's not a reflection. This is a good bill. It's a small step, but it is a step in very much the right direction. Because, Mr. Speaker, we do have problems, not a problem, we have problems with alcohol in this country, and there is an expectation that we as politicians will actually be prepared to do something. We've heard from a lot of speakers on the other side of the House tonight about how that we must do something, or we as a society must accept that we have to do something about alcohol, but given a chance to do something which will do no harm. This bill will do no harm whatsoever. It might be a small step, but it is a step in the right direction. Given a chance to take a step in the right direction, given a chance to take a position on a public health issue, a favourable position on a public health issue, the government's failed. The government has absolutely failed. They've been pulled into line on a conscience vote, and they've And that's right. They know that they should be, some of them should surely be seeing the merits of this bill and getting in behind a small step in the right direction. When you talk to the police, when you talk to social agencies, if you talk to community drug and alcohol treatment services, if you talk to youth workers, they all want to talk to you about alcohol, how alcohol is a driver of crime, how alcohol is a driver of social deprivation, how it's a driver of family violence and domestic violence. And we've heard already this evening about the economic impact of harmful alcohol misuse and abuse. $5.3 billion annually it costs this country from alcohol abuse. And that is out of a total of $6.2 billion, just $0.9 billion more. $5.3 billion out of $6.2 billion of total harmful drug and alcohol use is attributable to alcohol. It stands out. It is by far and away the single biggest drug issue we have in this country is the harmful misuse and abuse of alcohol. And yet, given the opportunity to take one small step to do something about it, the government has failed. We do get nervous about tackling alcohol issues. Why? Well, because there is a reasonable, sociable, responsible way to use alcohol. And I'm sure most members in this House probably enjoy a drink or two from time to time and enjoy it in an absolutely responsible and socially acceptable way. And the nervousness that we get around alcohol, though, we don't get that same kind of nervousness when we're talking about other drugs. And one of those drugs in particular at the moment is methamphetamine. Now, methamphetamine has absolutely no redeeming qualities whatsoever. None whatsoever. It is highly addictive, just like alcohol, but it does not foster any social behaviour patterns in the way that alcohol can. And the damage caused by methamphetamine use is absolutely minuscule in comparison to alcohol. And yet we have had the Prime Minister, amongst others, banging on and on and on about P and methamphetamine. I don't disagree that we need to be vigilant about harder drugs, but why do we have such a disproportional attitude and response to something which has such a tiny impact in comparison to something like alcohol? I think that's something we've really got to come to terms with in this House. And alcohol is a drug. Geoffrey Palmer is on record as saying alcohol is no ordinary commodity. It is a drug. Alcohol would be classed as a Class B drug under the Misuse of Drugs Act 1975 if it were treated on its merits. Obviously that's not going to happen, but the priorities of alcohol and the properties of alcohol are the reason why it must be closely regulated. Alcohol, like any other drug, can do harm. So the opportunity is here tonight for members to take a small step, and it's an opportunity where we're not whipped, where we can stand up and speak on our own behalf and say what our position is going to be. But unfortunately, the government is not prepared to take that opportunity. They're not prepared to take that opportunity whatsoever. Some people would say to us that advertising of alcohol doesn't really have that much of an impact, and it doesn't really encourage people to drink more. You know what I say to that? Yeah, right. Yeah, right. And that TUI advertising campaign is now so much part of New Zealand culture that it almost doesn't stand apart as an advertising campaign in itself. It's part of our culture. It's as much part of our culture as binge drinking is. It is part of the normalisation of a harmful approach to alcohol. So advertising does work. Advertising does work. And an example of this is one that we're going back a couple of years here, but I'm sure most people will remember it. And that was the Lion Red Chin Heads advertising campaign. And the penetration of that advertising to minors was illustrated through research that showed that 97% of minors had recalled seeing the Chin Heads ad. 71% knew it was for Lion Red. 92% had positive views of the ad, and 64% thought the chin head humour would appeal to minors. Okay, so advertising works. It's why the liquor industry engages in advertising. It's why Coca-Cola engages in advertising. It's why the tobacco industry still has found the one last bastion of advertising, and that's point-of-sale advertising. So we know that advertising works, and an opportunity to restrict it, to restrict the consumption, should be leapt at. But the government members, I have to say it time and time again, have absolutely failed to take the opportunity. As I said, Mr. Speaker, I have given this bill considerable thought. It is a small step, but it is a step worth taking, and I'm very, very pleased to vote in favour of this bill and support my colleague Brendan Burns.